So my name is Hannah Okert-Axelson. I'm sorry I didn't give you a heads up on the name. I am product lead at Habitual. We are a nutrition company that does a reversal program for people with type 2 diabetes. And I'm joined today by a wonderful panel who I didn't have their details, but you can see their details on the board here. So we have Jeroen, who is a former product director at eBay. We have Diana, a senior product designer at TravelPerk, and Olha, who is a lead product manager at Flow Health. So I would like to welcome them up. If you can give them a round of applause. Amazing. I think we can make ourselves comfortable. It's really crazy to meet these people in person, given that we've met on Zoom, but now I can see everyone's... Is that all right? Yeah, thanks. Awesome. So we're going to be talking today about building product teams for success, which these people all have really great experience with. And we're going to kind of talk about the full process, all the way from recruiting talent to retaining talent, coaching, and how you really create a successful team, especially a successful team of product managers, which can be a competitive environment. It can also be quite a high stress environment of people who are working in silo with their own cross-functional team, and that product team is actually their secondary team. So I just wanted to start off with, how do you find talent? How do you find the talent that you're trying to attract? Do you have mics, right?
Let's try that.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Jeroen, would you like to go first?
Oh, yeah. So how do you find talent? It's I think, a combination of things. So I was lucky to work for organizations where people actually ask for, do you have product jobs? Sometimes you're just very lucky to have really cool people knocking your door. One of the ways of finding great talent is doing things like, well, Mark just did, is speak and inspire people, and people come up to you like, where do you work? I want to work with you. So it's sometimes it's just fishing, and sometimes you're lucky.
So I might ask a follow-up question. I guess eBay is in a privileged position to have a bit of clout and that positive reputation around it. Maybe from either of the other panelists, have you had experience kind of not having that name recognition and trying to go out to candidates? And how would you attract them in that scenario?
We do. Yes, we did. Can you hear me, guys? Ooh. Well, what we do also at Flow is we do events. We have hiring events once in a while, I think once a year, and it creates this moment of gathering everyone in one room and giving them a time frame, apply today and get hired today, and then we get a sign-up bonus. But I also like to see if we can grow people from within the organization, because we already hired quite a few very talented people. So we're coaching people into becoming product managers in this instance, for example, from project manager or from a QA manager. We do have quite a few success stories where people move or transition into a product organization, which is quite a good path, if you ask.
That's a great example, and I know for a lot of us maybe who have started off in junior positions, getting those internal mobility opportunities are really exciting, because then we can see our career growth. Does anyone have experience with more of a formalized process on how to make those either internal job boards or however it is, those progression paths possible, especially if you're maybe in a smaller company where there's not as many opportunities?
Yeah,
Diana?
We do, for example, so we have recently we have set up in place like a career framework. So basically is kind of a way of guiding people to just grow within the organization, whether they come from, they want to grow in the same like role, or from different positions as well, maybe from customer care to product. So we have this framework where you can assess yourself based on certain skills, and then that if there is a particular skill that you want to invest on, then you can work with your manager to get to that level that you want. And we're trying to make this formal, because this way it's aligned and everybody is following the same career path. And so far it's working well. So
that's really good to hear. We've spoken a little bit about internal progression, which is a great place to be in, but sometimes you just don't have time. You need a senior hire really quick. How do you find that right person, and how do you woo them to want to apply to your company? Can I call on Ola?
I have a fun
Yeah?
case, yes. So I was hiring 2 senior product managers, and it took us, I think, about 5 months to hire. So we had an internal debate with my manager whether we should hire this person over that person, because I was like, we need to hire quickly. This role is really urgent. And he showed me, literally, because we were on Zoom, right? He showed me a Post-it note, and he said, look, if we hire someone now and we'll have to grow that person, they will grow like this. But if we wait a bit more and we find that great, extremely well-skilled for that role person, we'll hire them later, but they will grow like that. So they will overlap, and the better fit person would progress faster. And it really stuck with me because I was so frustrated. We were hiring for months and months, and we were not finding the right person. But to answer your question, it was a mix of headhunting and putting our position out there, putting it on very creative places, like on different conference boards or different product communities. And I think one we got from the product community, the other we got from a direct referral. So direct referral is also a very strong incentive, because we product people tend to know product people. So it's a very good one. And of course, you incentivize people with cash. So, like, please refer. If they get hired, then you get some nice bonus for it. But yeah, it was a very interesting moment. Like, you get frustrated when you can't hire, but you keep on going. Like what Mark said, keep on pushing, and you just persist, and eventually pays off much better, rather than just hiring someone right now and growing them and hoping they will get into it. You will get much more output this way.
That's a really interesting example of trying to find the right person you're willing to wait longer to find the right person to get them in that way. When you look at a product team or a team of product managers, and you're looking at, I want to start another product team, what are some of the key skills or attributes that you would be looking at if you are trying to grow this new team organically, and then the leader of that team?
Well, I think Mark just summed it up very well, like the 4 C's. So there's elements you just want to see in great product leaders. I personally, I'm a big fan of thinking of a great product leader is like an independent spirit. So we're not in the service providing business. We are free thinkers. That's what we should be, product leaders. So that's what I personally look at if I want to grow a team. It should be a free thinking team with a free thinking leader.
That makes a lot of sense. What about Diana or Ola? Any thoughts on what you would look for?
I think, like in our case, for example, we look for someone that can be autonomous, because like whether you're a product manager or a product designer, this is a very creative kind of work. And in order to be like the most successful when you are creative, you need to have autonomy, and so you need to be comfortable with that. So I think that's like a very important skill that a person needs to have as well.
And how do you assess for autonomy?
How do we assess for autonomy? Usually it's a combination of how, like, you talk about your past experiences, and maybe tell about how you work with your team in the past. Like, do you follow instruction, or do you wait for someone to give you a brief and then you can execute that? Or are you proactive? Do you bring new ideas? Do you push back when you don't agree with ideas? That's very important. And then, in our case, we also have like practical exercises that we can see how the person think, and if they have this kind of mindset, or if they rather kind of reactive sense.
Interesting. Any other thoughts on that?
I like to ask a lot of questions, so I look at what kind of questions the person's asking, because sometimes there's a lot of ego and desire to prove oneself, especially when it's a new team. I'm looking out for the kind of deep personal value of that person, whether that person is going into this to prove something to someone, or to gain to please the ego or something. So it's what questions they're asking. Are they asking enough questions? Are they asking deep enough questions? Or are they just what is the product, what is the business case? Okay, I'm off. And then you see them in 3 months totally failing because they were trying to do something for themselves rather than for the customers, for the business, whatever the product is. But yeah, it's really the questions they're asking to me. and how many? There should be a lot of questions asked.
A lot of questions, and probably quality questions as well, I can imagine. In terms of kind of the shifts that have happened in general in work and the world in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, how has that affected hiring product managers, or maybe even the things you look for in hiring product managers? Drum, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm not completely sure there has been a big shift between before COVID and after. So we're still hiring for the same qualities, and obviously people should be able to be less dependent on real life conversations. But ultimately, I think we're all smart and creative people, and we manage to deal with that. So I'm not necessarily hiring differently. The only thing is borders are becoming less important. So relocation or whatever is less of a thing. It's actually more easy now to hire.
Wonderful. Well, let's move on to retention, because if you've spent all this time getting in these great product people, you want them to stay and you want to ensure that they can have really successful careers at your companies. What are some of the things that you would do to try to create a really successful product community? So your peers or product managers who have this, support system or a place where they can come and get help and get feedback. What are some of the things that you would do to create that community?
Collaboration culture, I guess. So it's probably maybe one of the most important thing is making sure that you have a team that, first of all, you make sure you have a safe space where people can share ideas, and even if they are like early drafts or things that people are not sure about, they can share it comfortably and they can get feedback, constructive feedback. So I think facilitating that kind of environment, it's probably one of the most important things to make sure that the team is set up for success. And I think also having a great level of transparency and consistency. So if you are transparent with information, you're consistent with information, it means that then people can kind of plan their work ahead and they know when they're doing well or not doing well, and have a very clear direction. So to me, those two things are very important for a team.
Can you tell me a little bit more of what transparency of information looks like in the day-to-day? How do you really ensure that that's happening and that information is flowing?
Yeah. So for example, if the company has certain objectives for the next quarter or the year, it's important that they are constantly communicated. So as a team of designers, as a team of product manager or cross-functional team, I can have set up my own goals, and that matches the company goals. But that's also important that those goals don't change in 2 months' time because something happened and we made a new decision and now we're switching to pivoting to another direction. So in that sense, I'm transparent because I'm describing you as a company or as leadership where I want to get. But then I'm also consistent. I'm not changing this in 2 weeks' time or constantly. So probably those two things.
And I guess and I think about this in my own experience, how do you deal with or manage transparency of sensitive information or something that, you're running a pricing experiment and there's, a lot of maybe unknowns? What are some of the things that you would do to try to make sure that you're still having that consistency, but potentially there are certain people who are going to have access to information earlier or at different times? What would you do for those scenario? Either Dan or anyone else who has thoughts.
Run 5 privacy and security trainings. So people sign off, yes, I swear I will not share it outside. And then if they do, then,
Have you ever had anyone not follow those in order to, I've never been in a privacy and security training, so I'm just curious what maybe brought it upon.
No, I don't think we have that. I think within the organization, we have transparency quite to an extreme. It's a bit too transparent, if you ask me. I've not seen that much information shared in an organization. There are some aspects that are limited to only the teams, like financial or, those kind of teams. But it's a company policy. So how your company organizes their data and what accesses they give to what people. But before I worked in booking, and we had a slightly different approach to it. So even if you were to talk at a conference, there was a very clear guideline of what to talk to, what to share, what you can't share, what numbers to share, what not to share. So that's why you sometimes get a bit frustrated when you go to an event and you're asking, so what did you do? What copy change did you do? What button color did you do? And you're like, we made a change and it increased it by 25%. So you can't really share much. But with Flow, I see we're quite open with certain circles, especially for the product community. And we do have a large product community where we share this kind of stuff, which is quite exciting, to be honest.
Very nice. So we were talking about retention, and I'm curious, because product managers tend to be quite ambitious people, how do you nurture that ambition and create support systems to allow them for progression or being able to move forward in their careers? Jerome, maybe?
Yeah, so at eBay we had like this framework that more or less summed up, like, if you're on a junior level, we expect you to be able to do this and this and this, and so forth. So people knew what skills and soft skills, hard skills they should be able to show, and what behavior they should be able to show to get to a certain level. Obviously, it was not just like a ticking the box exercise, like, okay, I'm now ready, so promote me. But it was quite clear what was expected of one. And then, obviously, in practice, it's still a bit of a dodgy road or journey. Yeah.
So in the scenario that you have two senior product managers who are both hitting all of the check boxes, and you have one position, how would you make the decision around promotion or progression?
Yeah, so that's a difficult question, right? So obviously it's very much like what is required for a specific position, and how does it fit to the specific persons? How do people fit in a mix of a team they would be leading? So I like diverse teams, so that could be gender or age, but also like background. So is this person like a econometrist, or is it like an historian, and what would blend well in the mix? So it's not a simple answer to that question. Sorry.
No, I wasn't necessarily expecting a simple answer. In terms of progression frameworks, I haven't been in product for that long. I've only been in product for about 3 years, but I've definitely seen a rise in progression frameworks across products, but also across tech companies where you have engineering and user research, and every department seems to have a progression framework. And sometimes they link up and you have this wonderful, being able to progress from a support function into user research into product. But from your experiences, what are some of the attributes of a good progression framework versus a not as good or not as helpful progression framework? And especially in terms of helping your talent progress?
Examples, I think. So if you have real examples that you, especially if it's something that you witnessed, like some colleague, did this thing that worked very well, because then you can relate to those examples, and then it's a little bit easier to see where you are, I think. And then also examples are based on like impact and results, rather than like being too subjective. So I think that works very well.
Diana?
I have 2 things to add. One, the checkboxing situation, it's better to avoid it because it can become, see, I've done this. The one thing to tackle that was to add a word consistently performs at this level of beyond scope, which in booking meant I think 2 review cycles at that point. So it's not just for this particular review cycle you did this and this and this, but you've been doing this consistently. But another thing, I think, whatever the structure for progression is, make it transparent but stick to it. So the worst thing that happens is some people get promoted, but some people don't. And if they're all calibrated or compared to a role or a band or a job description or a level fairly, that's important, because when some people, particularly working together, like the situation, 2 people of the same caliber are applying for a job, as long as it's transparent and clear and it's open to feedback and discussion, that's fair. But the worst thing that can happen is there's this checkboxing culture, and some people get it and some people don't. And then there is no closing the loop of why, or what else do I need to do to grow. That just creates an unhealthy environment.
Really, really interesting. In terms of line management, mentorship, coaching. There's probably lots of different people in all of our lives in terms of how we're working towards our next step in our career. What is the role of the progression framework or the connection of the progression framework with these different people, and how do they interact and help use that as a tool to help that person take a next step?
We use it as a sheet that we look at every consistent time period, like say once every 2 weeks. So it's just an intention that that person, and it's important, I think, to mention that when we talk about progression, it is driven by the person who wants to progress rather than the other way around, and it's more effective that way. So the person comes up with a draft, we call it a professional development plan, and we align on the goals and the objectives and everything, and we lock it, and then we have timely check-ins on the things that are mentioned there, but it is driven by that person, and it is used as a transparent way to track progress towards that goal, and it's a very straightforward thing once you have it really clear and open, and everyone uses it. Oh, and it's open to everyone. I like to share it out so everyone can access it rather than, how is your progression going? It's like in the Google Drive, everyone can see it.
It's like personal progression is open for everyone to see.
I like to have my people's docs in a general folder. I did check the history, nobody's really peeking on them, but the culture of transparency, that this is not some secret information or like, hey, how do I grow? I've seen she grew. It's open, it's right there, just ask. But that's also one important thing. If someone wants to grow, they have to come out and ask for it or, drive their own growth. You can't just sit there and hope someone will notice you and will progress you into a new role. No, it doesn't work that way.
On the counter perspective, though, from a manager point of view, potentially you have a really high potential, maybe someone who's from a marginalized background or wouldn't necessarily have, the societal systems in place that would give them, even just the entitlement to ambition. And that's definitely something I've recognized in some of my roles and some of the people that I've worked with. If you had someone like this who you think, this is a really high potential individual and I want to help them and give them a bit of a nudge, what would you do either with that personal development plan or how you would encourage them to set bigger goals so that they can take another step, even if that's not inherently something that they would push for themselves, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
Gianna?
Well, I think in those cases, it's a combination of things, but it's asking questions actually to understand where this person would like to go towards, and try to make them notice all the little things that they did well. This way, giving an idea that yes, you can be ambitious because look at this thing that you did, or look at that other time where you speak up in this difficult situation. So it's probably just a little bit slower, and it's more kind of coaching rather than telling this person what to do. But I think it can be done with even with people that are less ambitious, and it's just about finding those things that are working well and highlight them for this person.
Sometimes it's also the question: is to be less ambitious? Is it a bad thing? And for some, it isn't. They're just comfortable with what they do. Some people just don't see their own qualities that well, and that's something you just really have to call out. Like, you're amazing in this. You're maybe not aware.
Yeah, no, really good point. I think the constructive criticism and feedback is really valuable for our development, but the affirming feedback on things that we're doing really well can also be very, very helpful in taking that step. We do have the Slido open. We have about 5 minutes left, so if anyone has any questions for our panelists, please do submit them on the Slido. We've mentioned coaching a couple times, and I'm just curious because I never took a class in coaching, but I'm definitely expected to coach. How do you become a good coach, or how do you help your, developing leaders become good coaches of their peers?
Yeah, so at eBay we trained leaders to become coaches. So I must admit that I did some training. On the other hand, I think we product people should be equipped, with the curiosity, for example, because it's just about asking very powerful questions. So in essence, we should be proper coaches.
I'd say add a bit of empathy to it and just sit down and listen. Ask the question and wait. And wait a bit more. And then wait a bit more, and then the person starts talking, and then really listen to them. I didn't do any training, unfortunately, but that's what helped me.
Yeah.
Just be there intentionally for the person and listen.
So we have a couple questions that have come in. The first one is, how do you deal with bad hires when after some time you see that person is not necessarily the right fit?
Sometimes is like, very often it happens that the bad hire is you hire someone that is actually great at the role. Maybe you are a great product manager, a great product designer, but you have a different work style and it doesn't fit well with the company you hired you there. And in that case I think at some point it becomes just evident that it's not a match, and it just like, sometimes maybe this person looks for a better opportunity for them, and honestly, majority of the cases, that's the situation that I saw. Someone that just wasn't like a fit, and they just look for something that was better for them. That's what I saw.
Use the probation period. That's what it's for. Yeah. So let them do something quickly to show a full cycle of a piece of work, right? Maybe like a feature, like let them succeed fast or fail fast to see within that time frame whether they are successful or not, and whether it's a fit. And I wouldn't say bad hire, it's just, this is what the probation period is for, right? You really give the person an opportunity to do the work on this ground, on their terms, and you just see if it works out or if it doesn't.
Great. So we only have a couple minutes left, so we'll try to do upvote if you have questions that you really want answers to. So we have an upvoted question, which is, how do your companies upskill product leaders?
What does that mean, upskill?
I guess my interpretation would be that you have someone who is maybe being primed for a role but hasn't necessarily done the role yet. Say you have a senior product manager who's going to now become a product director or product leader, and they've maybe not had loads of line management experience before, and now you think that they have the potential and that they're ready, but they just haven't done it before. How do you upskill them to that role?
Yeah, I like taking a leap of faith. So if you haven't done it, then jump in the pool, and I'll help you if you drown. But
throw them the life raft.
Yeah.
Be ready there on the sidelines. Yeah. We have a question for Ola. So in the interview process, how do you spot someone who would drive their development while also having a low ego?
It's the questions and the answers. You can hear that. I do look out for those little words and signals when the person talks. It's how they talk. It's what language they use and what work they showcased. So it's a mix of saying, oh, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. We don't do stuff ourselves, right? We do, Excel sheets and PDF files and presentations, but the work sometimes, most of the times, is done by the team. So is that person showing the team? Is that person talking about the people who did the work? Is the person talking about the customers? Is it talking about the problem or talking about themselves? There is a fine line between advocating for yourself and really just sitting there bragging about the work you could deliver with the help of your organization and people. So I do that, and also give the case study. I found that the case study where you can talk about a new topic or a new case, that's not just the person highlighting their experience really well in a well-rehearsed manner, but doing a case and then doing some pivots on the spot for the case. That really helps you, because then you can see how they react and what they do.
I'm going to ask one more question from the Slido, which is, how do you give the message you're not ready for the next role when someone thinks that they are?
I think it should definitely not come to that specific moment. You should have those conversations like every week, and so it should not be a surprise to someone. So they should maybe not even ask the question because they knew.
I'm in that position right now. I'm very vulnerable, thinking I'm not ready for the role I'm in right now because it just grew. But it's talking. You talk to people all the time. But I think it's our responsibility also as product people to go out and tell our intention, to talk to people who we work with, because that I found is a very not common thing, you know, to really be transparent and open, and it's okay. It's not a failure like you did, right? You think person has potential, you push them into the pool, you watch them, you see how they're doing. If they're drowning, you kind of expect them to tell you, you know, help, I'm struggling. But if they're struggling and failing and failing and failing, that it also tells something about their core skill set of a self-managed product manager, because we are our own product, right? Yeah. So if they don't talk about it, then I think it's also a signal for maturity of their core competencies.
And it's also rephrasing the question. Maybe it's not about, oh, I think I'm ready for the next role, but it's, what do you need to get to the next role? So if you rephrase it like that, then it's a conversation where you can establish a path forward.
Thank you, everyone.